know you want to rock the DBQ. You want to knock this test out of the park, and you all absolutely can do it because they give you everything you need to know. What we need to make sure before May, before the exam date, is that you guys thoroughly understand what is required of you on the rubric. Some of you are sitting very far away from the screen, and the font might be a little too small for you to see. Again, I'm recording it, and you will be able to see that more clearly on the video that'll be uploaded. But I can also email this out to everybody. But it's everywhere. If you have one of those test prep books, they're going to tell you the same thing that I'm going to tell you right now. But I will say this. If you have a test prep book, awesome. Use it for its summary material of the content. Use it for its practice multiple choice essays. Avoid the essay sections, okay? Stay away from their essay sections. I don't think their essay sections are very realistic for what you guys really do. For example, they tell you, here's a sample, and we're going to give this one a 7, but it's all typed out by probably some, like, AP World History teacher, all right? Some adult with a typewriter in front of them that's not constrained by the same time that you are. And it's not their rough draft. Every essay that you guys do for the AP exam, you're writing rough drafts under like a serious pressure situation. And so I don't think those practice essays are very good, all right? So I don't want you to read any of those pages in your test prep booklets, any of the pages about the essays. Please don't. Will you? No. Good. Listen to me. Thank you. Well, you guys are really good at not doing things we tell you not to do. It's getting you to do things that we want you to do that's always tougher. So we want to rock the DBQ. Do we want to do this? Yeah. I don't think you want to do it. Yeah. Do you want to rock the DBQ? Yeah. I think most of you want to rock the DBQ and someone needs to throw up. All right. So how do we rock the DBQ? How do we rock the DBQ? We rock the DBQ by absolutely knowing the rubric, mastering this rubric. Now, I'm not saying you have to memorize the rubric, because if you just follow the steps that I give you when we're going to write this, you will, in essence, respond to all parts of the rubric. But first things first, we are going to go through what gives you each individual point on any DBQ question that you're going to get. Now, online, the College Board is really nice, and they have released to everybody every single DBQ that World History, AP World, every single essay that the AP World History exam has had since its birth back in 2002. So they are all online. You can see them all. We're going to use a lot of them as practice throughout the year, but you could get them all. Not only can you get the actual questions, but you can get the rubrics that the teachers used, like us graders, that we use when we mark the AP World exams. So you can see those rubrics. I've given you one today to look at. You can also see sample essays. They're all released for you. You can see what a good DBQ looked like from that test, what a mediocre one looked like, what a pretty poor one might have looked like. So you guys have a lot of available examples of real live DBQs from the real live exam. But before we look at real ones, I want to give you my rules based on the rubric of how we want to handle this. Yes, sir? We're not today. We're not today. But they exist out there, okay? And I don't like to spend a lot of time looking at bad ones, because we could all write a bad DBQ. We want to learn how to write a good one. So we're going to focus on that. And let's handle questions at the end. The DBQ for AP World is 9 points. This is different from your AP US History exam last year. AP US had a major rewrite last year. The exam is totally different. AP World is getting a major change for next year. You guys all get to avoid that change. So we are working under the old system. It's a 9-point rubric. Doesn't mean much to you, 9 points, if you don't know where they're coming from. The AP World rubric, the DBQ rubric, breaks itself down into 7 what we call basic core points. Basic things that you all need to do, and if you achieve those 7 points, it will get you into 2 possible points of expanded core. All right? So the max you can get is 9. You can get a 7 if you get all of the basic core points. If you do that, you get a chance at 2 additional. So maybe you would get an 8, or maybe you would get a 9 total there. All right? But let's say you only get 6 of the basic core, you have no chance to get expanded core. All right? If you get 5 basic core, the max you can get is 5 then. If you get 3, you get a 3. Now, out of this rubric of 9, again, this is like advanced placement college board world. And it's weird compared to, go sit over there somewhere. Yep, I know, I don't want you in the camera though. Get out of here. All right? Just sit on the floor, relax, be comfortable. If you are, you're ruining my movie.
Sorry.
Actually, it's Miss Burak that ruined my movie, but that's okay. Because Mr. Dobie does no editing. That takes time. Sit there. All right. So, in bizarro land of the College Board and of the AP exam, like I said, if you're getting like 50 or 60% of your multiple choice questions right, you can be A-okay to get your 3 or higher on the AP exam. When it comes to the essay, when we read these DBQs, the average scores typically are like between a 1.5 out of 9 or a 2.5 out of 9. They're in that range. Most kids do very poorly on these. Our kids won't. You guys won't. We're going to average, I hope, a 5 or a 6 or a 7. All right? Because we're going to really know well how to write this essay. But most kids around the world, they don't knock this out of the park. All right?
Like people in Florida.
Don't say people in Florida might listen to this, okay? People in Florida can do every bit as good as everybody else, all right? All right? But people in Sterling Heights, Michigan, we're going to knock this out of the park. All right. So how do you get your basic core points? First, you have to have a thesis. It is the most essential part of your paper. I believe if you write a good thesis, that sets you up to get many more points down the road. A thesis on an AP exam, the DBQ or the CCOT or the compare and contrast, a thesis is your answer to the question. It's as easy as that. There is going to be a question. You have to answer the question. That answer to the question is your thesis. The thesis, I'm going to say for DBQ, addresses what we call the key of the question. Every question that we're going to look at, and we'll look at a number of them today, every question that we will look at has something that you're required to do. It's got something that you're required to respond to. You have to be able to pull that out of the question, and then as we go through all the different parts of the rubric, everything you do must be responding to that key. All right? This will make more sense as we look at an actual question, but keep that in the back of your mind. You have to respond to the key of the question. Your thesis can be in the first or last paragraph. Having it available in the last paragraph is like a last-ditch hope that you can get a thesis point out of it. Our thesis will be in the first paragraph. It might be restated in our conclusion paragraph, all right? But we're going to get that point in our first paragraph. In AP World, on the DBQ, CCOT or CCOT, I said that, CC, on our essays, the thesis can be broken into multiple sentences. Sometimes you have to respond to multiple parts of a question. So a thesis response, a thesis could be 2 or 3 sentences. But your thesis cannot stretch into multiple paragraphs. You can't have part of the answer in the introductory paragraph and then the other part of the answer in the second paragraph. It all must be in the introductory paragraph. Good? Good. Your thesis statement will include your groupings for the DBQ. I haven't talked about that. More on that later. But we are going to work your groups into your thesis paragraph. All right? I like to call it a thesis paragraph more than a thesis statement because we want to think, yes, this can go more than one sentence. Good? Good. Let's get another point. You've got to address the basic meaning of the documents. In AP World, you are going to have probably 6, 7, or 8 documents to deal with. All right? You have to use all of those documents. You have to use all of the documents. You must attempt, address, in some way or another, acknowledge the existence of all of the documents. You have to do that. And then you must demonstrate understanding of all of the documents or all but one. The College Board lets you screw up one document. You can misinterpret or misunderstand one document. You have to use it. You have to attempt to use it. If you don't attempt to use it, you can't get this point. But if you attempt to use them all, but you screw up one, you misinterpret one, you're okay. You can still get the point for basic meaning. But for all the rest, you better understand them all. All right? And one nice thing is we can show our understanding by appropriately putting them in a proper group. We're going to talk more about groups in a second, but you're going to understand that grouping is very important. All right, your next step. There we go. I did not. For your evidence, you can get 1 or 2 points for evidence. All right? Let's be optimistic here. We're going for 2 points. You have to pull something from that document, whatever it is, that helps you answer the question. Why does that document support your thesis? How does that document respond to the key of the question? If you do that for all of the documents, or all but one of the documents, you get 2 points. That is the part where you literally pull something out of the document. Not necessarily verbatim. We want you to, put some ideas into your own words. Not just merely copying a sentence from the document is not going to count for you. You have to be able to apply it and use it to respond to your question. If you do that for all of the documents or all but one, you get 2 points. If you do it for all but 2 of the documents, so if there's 6 documents and you do it for 4 of them, you can get 1 point out of it. So you got to actually pull things out of the document to respond to your thesis. That's your evidence. That's up to 2 points. Just listing the document will not count for anything. All right? You got to go deeper than just putting the document in a listed group. Point of view. Every historical document that exists has, in some way or another, the point of view of the creator, the point of view of the time period that it was made in. The point of view can be influenced by who this document is addressing, or what is the purpose of the document. All of these things shape the point of view of a document. Essentially, it's why is this document saying what it is saying about the topic in the time period, or why does this author who holds this position say what they say? Why might they be more likely to believe what they believe based on their position? All right? So we want to try to address the point of view. For example, if you were listening to maybe a Republican presidential debate recently or a Democratic presidential debate, who is the intended audience for a Republican presidential debate? Republican voters. People that will go and vote in a Republican primary. So do you think those Republican candidates are going to sound and say things slightly different in their Republican primary debates compared to eventually the general election debate when they're going up against a Democrat? Absolutely. In the debates, Democrats tend to move further to the left of the political spectrum, and Republicans tend to move further to the right of the political spectrum. But when they have their general election, both of them try to move a little bit to the middle and bring in more voters across the country. So who is talking is as important as who is being talked to. The time periods can also be very important in addressing these things, right? But the time that something is written, how close it is in proximity to some event that might shape people's thinking, that can have a big impact. I guarantee right now that the way people are talking right now about the atrocities in France on Friday night will probably be slightly different from the way people will talk a year from now, 5 years from now, 10, 15 years from now. All right? And so the time period can certainly impact the point of view of an author. You must analyze, I encourage you as your teacher, to analyze the point of view of as many documents as you can. Now understand we have a time crunch here, right? You're only going to have about 45, 50 minutes to knock this whole thing out, maybe an hour. But every extra minute you take on your DBQ is taking time away from your other 2 essays. So you're under a time crunch here. I'd love it if you were able to address and analyze the point of view of every single document. But that might not be reasonable. Especially if there's 8 documents. That can be hard to do for every single document. But for as many documents as you can, with a bare minimum of 3, you need to address the point of view. All right? So always try to stick with having absolutely a minimum of 3. AP essays are graded on what we call an asset-based scoring model. You get points for what you do well. You don't lose points for what you do poorly. So we always want to try to go above and beyond. If you have to address the point of view, according to an AP rubric, of 2 documents, and you try to do 2 documents, and you do one well and you screw another one up, now you only have a successful point of view on 1 document, and you can't get that point. So we're going to go for 3, with hopes that you do all 3 very good. Maybe, though, you'll screw one up. Well, if you screw one up, you still have 2 good ones, and you'll still likely get that point. Yes, sir?
So, like, I'm really confused on the question.
Yeah.
So could you do, like, point of view for all the documents?
Absolutely.
And you would get the point of view?
Yep.
And that would...
But hold on to that thought. You're going to guarantee get yourself that point, but now you might open yourself up to expanded core points if you get all the basic core. But yeah, it seems like you're doing overkill. Like, hey, if the college, like, because when you read your test prep booklet, they're going to tell you to address the point of view probably in 1 document. And you might do that. If all you do is read that test prep book, I'm going to respond to the point of view in 1 document. And then you do it. But you don't do it very well. And you don't get that credit for that point of view. Well, now you have nothing else to lean on. All right? So I want you to go above and beyond. All right? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Hold off on that. Hold off on that. This document, the example that I gave you today is actually older. And generally speaking, they're usually not that tough for getting point of view. All right? They've changed a little bit in the last decade on their requirements for that. I say you must have a minimum of 3, but I'd really like all of you to do them all, or as many as you can. Sometimes, guys, it's hard to pull out the point of view of a document. Sometimes you might have like a map. Well, maps might be more challenging to find the point of the view of the creator or the publisher of the map. That could be harder. So maybe you won't do that one. Yeah? No, we'll talk about how that's all going to happen. Let's talk about how that's going to happen. All right. So I say for point of view, you want to analyze the point of view of 3 of those documents. Okay, next. This is the big daddy. It's only 1 point, but I think this 1 point can help you get a lot of other points. Grouping of your documents. Guys, this is what historians do. This is what historians do. They've got a historical question that they want to investigate. And they find as much research as they can, all about the topic that they're investigating. And then they start to analyze the research that they found. And they might start finding that there's commonalities between the different sources that they found. And when you start finding commonalities, you might group them together. And for historians writing a book, that might be like a chapter of their book, all right? Or that might shape how their thesis is going to look. So the grouping of disparate documents is really important. The College Board sets you up. They're going to give you the sources. You have to read them. And then you have to see how they fit together to answer the question. So when we're grouping, you must analyze those documents by grouping them in hopefully 3 ways. More often than not, the College Board gives you credit for doing it in 2 ways. A lot of your test prep books, they're probably going to say to do it in 2 ways. I say 3 ways. Try to find 3 distinct groups. That might be hard, but try to find 3. If you only do 2 and one of your groups is weak, now you only have 1 group and you get no credit for it. So we're going to try to group them in 3 ways. Or 4 if you want to get wild. Now, the practice one we're going to look at later, that's only got 6 documents. It's hard to group 6 documents in more than 3 ways. It can be done, but it's harder. So we're going to try to shoot for 3 groups. In what ways do these 3 groups stick together? But you can't make any old group you want. For example, some kids like to make groups based on things like, these were all written by women, or these were all written by men, or these were all written by Romans, or these all came from people in the Han Dynasty, or whatever. Those groups may not work for you. A group, to be successful, must tie itself to your thesis, must help you answer the question, must respond to that key. All right? So if the key says to analyze the responses of the Chinese to the spread of Buddhism, you must have groups that are groupings of responses. All right? You can't just say, these responses come from women, these responses come from men. That tells us nothing about what the responses are. So you must answer the question with your groups. All right? Yes, sir. Riddick? I got Riddick right now.
Yeah, I'm like still really confused. Like,
Awesome.
like positive. Are you trying to like is the question supposed to be like opinion sort of based like you're on one side?
No. We don't care about your opinion in this case. When you are writing your DBQ, it's more of an analysis piece. You're analyzing the documents in order to answer a question. And very rarely will if ever, will a DBQ question have you like take a stand on what is the right answer. We don't care what the right answer is. You're supposed to be able to evaluate typically different viewpoints. That will make sense when you read the question that we're going to get to. So hold off on that for a moment. Yes, Alex.
Like when you say group in two ways, you want two groups or four groups? Or what
When you're grouping in 2 ways, that means 2 groups. When you group in 3 ways, you want 3 groups. So I'm going to try to get you guys to always shoot for 3 groups. All right? 3 groups.
Divide the document into 3 distinct groups? Like
Yes. 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 No, there can be overlap. There can be overlap. Let's get to that in a second here. You must have a minimum of 2 documents to make up a group. All right? 1 document on its own does not make for a group. So you got to have at least 2 things that fit in a group. But the College Board and the readers and the AP in general, we love it when you guys are sophisticated enough to recognize that 1 document, maybe used in different ways, might fit into 2 different groups. So in a DBQ like the one you guys have in front of you, we'll look at it in a few minutes, where there's only 6 documents, you better believe you might have some overlapping documents. Like documents 2 and 3 and 5 all talk about positive responses to Buddhism. I'm making this up. We'll look at them specifically. And documents 1 and 4 talk about negative responses. And how documents 2 and 3 deal with responses from political leaders who are trying to bring more order to their nation. All right? Whatever it is, you can overlap the groups. Or the documents can be in 2 distinct groups. In fact, you're probably going to have to do that. I've got a question in the back here.
So when you say like you can't group them, but like they're all written by women or they're all written by Republicans, would that be more point of view when you say that?
That kind of stuff could address point of view, absolutely. Absolutely. But it probably wouldn't make a group because that probably wouldn't answer the question. And it will make so much more sense. In fact, I encourage my students to, even before they read the documents, to predict what groups are probably going to show up. And that typically helps. And I think I said the same thing to you guys last year with A-Push. Yeah? I'm going to talk about that all in a second, so hold off on that. Yeah?
So if we do group them, like if they were all written by like women or
Yeah.
like certain groups, but they all have like the same idea about them, could we use that? Like,
Yeah, then you can acknowledge, yes, that all of these women believe the same thing that responds to the question. But women in and of themselves probably wouldn't make for a good group.
Unless they're specifically asking you
About gender relations. Yeah.
gender, you can fight it. I always think of the so what question.
Yeah. Like, what's the point of what you're doing?
What's the point of all of these women?
The last task of your basic core is to call for an additional document. It's another task of the historian, guys. A historian is trying to answer a question, they're doing their research, and maybe they believe that their research is somewhat incomplete because they are lacking a particular voice. You know, of all the sources that they had, maybe we don't have a source from some underrepresented group in history where there are just simply less sources that exist, like women or like peasants or whomever. Maybe there's some source out there that would help you get a better picture of a response to the question being asked. And you guys in your paper, and we're going to show you how to do this, are going to ask for that additional document. Say an additional source that would be helpful would be this, that I wasn't given in my sources. Now, 2 rules of thumb on this. Do not, and this happens, do not ask for an additional source that is already given to you. They're going to give you 6 or 7 or 8 sources. One of them might be from a peasant. Don't ask for an additional source from a peasant if they've already given it to you. That's not going to get you anything. And the additional source, while it doesn't have to be a real document that you know exists, like you don't have to name a specific document that you use maybe in class for something else and call for that. You don't have to know specifically anything. But what you're asking for has to be like legitimately possible within the realm of the world we live in. My point on that is getting the opinion of a peasant is possible. Getting the opinion of a female or an ethnic minority is possible. But having an outside view from an extraterrestrial that happens to land on Earth at that time that would have a completely impartial view of what was happening, that's silly. Don't write about that.
Or the Greek gods.
Sure.
I wish we knew what the Greek gods were thinking when they did what?
Yeah, have it be something within the realm of possible historic reality. Okay? And that's the additional document. Your rubric, the AP rubric, the rubrics that you're going to see in your test prep guides are going to ask for 1 additional document. Again, we want to go above and beyond. So I'm going to always encourage you guys to ask for 2 additional documents, if not more. Because if you do 2 and you screw up 1, you still have a good one. All right? If you do 2 and you do both well, now you're on your way to expanded core. Maya.
Do we have to use a document or something like that we know like the name of or something?
Nope. You can be making it up. It just has to be possible that it could exist. So like let's say you're dealing with some issue of 19th century laborers, and you've got 3 documents from guys that are going to work in 19th century factories, and you have 3 documents from the owners of factories, but you don't have any from like a seamstress in the 1900s, or in the 1800s. Well, or child labor, yeah. So it's got to be something that is legitimate, but you don't have to know that that document really exists. All right? But a historian that wants to find that would hone him in on how he would be looking for things. You know, it would focus his hunt. Guys, these historians, they're really just detectives trying to answer a question, a mystery of maybe a century or older. So they're hunting just like you guys. You guys don't have to hunt. The documents have all been found for you, except for 1. So what document would you use that would help you better answer this question and get a better understanding of what's being asked? Yes, ma'am.
Do we have to expand on the document, or can we just mention, one document that I feel would be necessary in this situation is blah, blah, blah?
And then say why. So we always want to give the why, or as Ms. Hall just said, the so what. So we're going to, I would love to see a document from this person because it would give us a better view of how this group of people felt about the issue at hand. But everything you do is going to ultimately tie back to that question that's being asked, what we call the key. You're going to shoot for 2 additional documents. If you do all of that successfully, you have a chance for the expanded core. I don't spend a lot of time teaching you guys how to be expanded core kind of folks. We worry about the basic core. If you get the basic core, and if you do it the way we tell you how to do it, you're probably going to get some expanded core points. All right? So if you have a really good and balanced and comprehensive analytical thesis, you can get expanded core. If you go above and beyond the call of duty with regard to point of view or the additional document, like instead of just having 2 or 3, you have 4 or 5 points of view. That's going to be good. All right? If you bring in the wider world historical context, like what this question is, how does it connect with other things going on? Excellent. Guys, as a reader, if your writing is just really strong, like when you're reading at the AP exam, you read a lot of lousy essays. Okay? Kids that may not know what they're doing, writing under a time crunch, maybe not particularly caring about how they do on this or not. There's a lot of bad stuff. So when you get that essay that is just really well organized and really well balanced and answers all parts of the question effectively and equally, well, then that makes you want to give them an extra point. But here's the reality. The last time I was at the AP reading a couple years ago, I read DBQs. And of the probably 700 DBQs I read in a week, I probably had 5 that got to 7 points or more. It doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen very often. That doesn't mean it can't happen for you, because we in UAIS don't get to teach all those other kids around the country. No. We can absolutely get there, okay? Do what we say, listen to what we tell you, and it can happen. So in a nutshell, how do we write an essay? Yes, Alex?
I was going to say, like, if you just said that, for example, the graders will like often not give, like, will only give like few of them like full credit or like a lot of points.
Yeah.
Well, then that's just grader bias. Like, we can't get past that.
No, it's not grader bias. We're all grading according to a rubric. And the rubric is what the rubric is. That's what we have to mark on. So there is no grader bias here. Like, we're not going in there saying, these kids are dopey, and I'm not giving them good marks. No, you are absolutely not allowed to do that. In fact, I think the opposite is the case. The graders are bending over backwards to try to give you points where you have earned them. All right? We hunt for points. When I read an essay and it's a couple pages long, and I'm like, this is a 0. He didn't do anything well enough to get any points. That's the essay that I look back at to see if I missed something. Or that's the essay I might share with a table partner and have, hey, look at this. Do you see a thesis point in here? I don't think they went far enough. What do you think? The opposite is true. But the reality is, it's hard. Like, kids under the time crunch of an AP exam miss little things here and there. Or they think they're responding to the point of view. Like, for example, sometimes kids say, the point of view of this article is from a woman. And they leave it at that. They never put the so what. Like, they never go on to explain it's from a woman, so she would be more, a female in the society would be more likely to believe this type of thing that she's writing about. And that could shape how she is writing. So oftentimes kids think they're doing the point of view, or they think they're giving an additional document, and they walk out of their test patting themselves on the back like they're going to knock it out of the park because they did everything the rubric told them to do, but they didn't go far enough on any of it. Or they grouped them, but their group didn't respond to the thesis. All right, it didn't respond to the key, so they don't get those points. All right, so let's run through and look at a few real questions from real DBQs. You guys can't maybe read them from the back of the room, so I'll read it aloud to you. Using the following documents, analyze responses to the spread of influenza in the early 20th century. What's the key of that question? Analyze is one word. The responses to this. So now we're looking for the responses to the spread of the influenza in the early 20th century. All right? How did people deal with this spreading disease? What kind of responses did they have? All right? And even before you start reading the documents, you might think, well, I bet some people are going to be really concerned. Or I bet governments are going to get involved. Or maybe some people are just going to let it happen and let it run its course. You might think of possible responses that nations might have or people might have. And you start thinking about those even before you read your document. But when you start grouping them up, you better have groups of common responses. Every group must be a response. All right? And hopefully you can come up with 3 different and distinct responses. Look at this one. One second. Use the following documents. I am looking at the wrong thing on my screen here. Use the following documents to analyze the relationship between Chinese peasants and the Chinese Communist Party between 1925 and 1950. What's the key? The relationships between the Chinese peasants and the Communist Party. And you can imagine, some documents will probably talk about positive, strong relationships. Some documents might talk about strains in the relationship, right? And you're going to think about those things before you start looking through. Find the key, and then everything addresses that key. Your thesis gives the varying relationships. Your thesis is going to lay out what the groups are going to be. Awesome. Another one. I love this question. I read this DBQ a few years back. I hated this question, but I love it for what it can show us. Analyze the relationship between cricket and politics in South Asia. It's another word for South Asia. India. Cricket and politics between 1880 and 2005. Here's the reality, guys. There probably isn't an AP World History class anywhere that spends any amount of time talking about cricket. And a lot of kids would get this question and they'd be like, my teacher never taught us about cricket and its relationship to politics. Doesn't matter. They're giving you the documents. So if you're literate, you can do this. So analyze the relationship. Did the government support cricket? Was the government antagonistic towards it? Or any other relationships that might pop up as you read through these documents. But it must actually answer that question. Here's another one. Analyze African actions and reactions in response to European scramble for Africa. I love this question. So everything that we do, the key is what?
Analyze actions and reactions.
What are the actions and reactions in response to the European scramble for Africa? So how did African groups feel about or respond to the European conquest of Africa? Maybe how did Europeans respond to that conquest for Africa? What are the actions and reactions to that conquest? Everything you do must tie back to that. Yes, ma'am?
Do the amount of paragraphs that you have depend on or is there
Great question. Yeah, there's no scripted rule as to how to write these essays. How long should they be? How many paragraphs should they be? But I'm going to tell you, yes, absolutely. If you have 3 groups, you are going to have an introductory paragraph, one paragraph dealing with your first group, another paragraph dealing with your second group, another paragraph dealing with your third group, an additional paragraph possibly to separately handle a call for an additional document, or maybe you're working that within your other groups. That could be fine too. And then a conclusion if you have time. Absolutely. All right, got one more along the same lines. Analyze factors that shaped the modern Olympic movement from 1892 to 2002. There's no class that's going to spend time talking about the modern Olympic movement. But in AP World class, you are going to learn about that time period, and you're going to read about the Olympics, and you are going to analyze factors that shape the Olympic Games, right? Now, this question tripped a lot of kids up. Because if you don't really read this question carefully, you can easily respond to the wrong thesis or write an incorrect thesis. This question says, analyze factors that shaped the Olympics. A lot of kids, when they wrote this DBQ, they showed how the Olympics shaped the modern world, right? They went the wrong way. So you've got to make sure you read that question carefully and you respond to the key as it's presented. And that's how a lot of kids can walk out of that test feeling very good that they answered this question very well. And right off the bat, they can't get the thesis point. Like if you talk about how the 1980 Olympic boycott by the United States, 1980 Olympic Games were held in Moscow. This is after the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. After the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, so the United States boycotted the 1980 Olympic Games. If you say the American boycott of the Olympic Games caused greater tension between the United States and the Soviet Union, that doesn't answer this question. If you say the Cold War controversies between the United States and the Soviet Union or the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan impacted the political views of the Olympic Games, then you're good. See how that can go the wrong way very easily if we don't carefully read that question. You guys are all going to do it perfectly well, though. All right. That's it. Good? Good. All right. Now, without any further ado, and as we're running out of time and I'm not recording anymore, we are going to look at a DBQ. What you have in front of you. Shh. What you have in front of you